Before leaving the apartment, he had made the mistake of looking in the mirror. The reflection that stared back was a stranger's face, a mask he'd been forced to wear for 24 years. Long, slender fingers that felt borrowed, elegant in a way that seemed to mock him, pushed back a wave of tousled brown hair. The face itself was a cruel collection of contradictions, high cheekbones and full lips that whispered of a softer form, at constant war with the sharp, uncompromising line of his jaw. The dark stubble beginning to bloom across his chin and upper lip felt like a daily betrayal, a fresh layer of paint on the walls of his cell. A heavy sigh escaped his lips, the sound swallowed by the sterile silence of the bathroom. Another day of feeling like a ghost in his own body, of pretending to be the son, the brother, the man everyone saw. The real person, the woman he knew himself to be, was screaming from behind the glass, but the sound never escaped. A sharp knock at his bedroom door had jolted him from his brooding. "You decent in there, sleeping beauty?" a familiar voice called, laced with an infuriating cheerfulness. Despite the leaden weight in his soul, a small smile touched Elias's lips. "As decent as I'll ever be," he called back. "Come on in, Leo." The door swung open and Leo sauntered in, looking far too vibrant for the gravity of the morning. His wild red curls were a chaotic halo barely contained by a backwards baseball cap, and his green eyes sparkled with an energy that Elias both envied and desperately needed. "Rise and shine, princess," Leo teased, flopping onto the edge of the bed with a dramatic sigh. "We've got a big day ahead of us. History is about to be made." Elias groaned, burying his face in his hands. "Don't remind me. I still can't believe I let you talk me into this." Leo's jovial expression immediately softened. He shifted closer, placing a warm, comforting hand on his friend's shoulder. "Hey, none of that," he said, his voice losing its playful edge. "This consultation could change everything for you. Dr. Albright is the best in the business when it comes to gender confirmation. You read the testimonials. You know this." I know, Elias muttered into his palms. "It's just, what if she takes one look at me and sees a joke? What if she laughs me right out of her office? What if I'm not, woman enough to even qualify?" "That's ridiculous, and you know it," Leo said firmly, giving his shoulder a slight shake. "You possess more grace and empathy in your little finger than half the cis women I know. This isn't about being woman enough. This is about being you. Now come on, get that cute butt of yours in gear. We have an appointment with destiny." With a theatrical sigh that was only half feigned, Elias hauled himself to his feet and shuffled towards his closet. "Fine. But you're buying me coffee on the way. The good stuff, from that place with the snooty baristas. Not that gas station swill you usually try to pass off as caffeine." Leo's rich laughter followed him. "Your wish is my command, Your Highness." Now, standing before the clinic door, that brief moment of levity felt a lifetime away. The drive had passed in a blur of nervous chatter and half-hearted jokes. Leo had tried his best, keeping the music loud and the conversation light, but Elias felt each passing mile as a tightening knot in his stomach. When they pulled into the parking lot of the sleek, modern medical building, the silence in the car became immense. "Well, this is it," Leo said, killing the engine. He turned to face Elias, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "No matter what happens in there, I want you to know how incredibly proud I am of you. You're the bravest person I know, Eli." Tears pricked at Elias's eyes, and he blinked them back furiously. "Thanks, Leo," he whispered, his voice thick. "I couldn't do this without you." They shared a quick, fierce hug before climbing out of the car. As they approached the building's entrance, Elias's steps faltered. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, the fear threatening to send him running back to the car, back to the miserable safety of his old life. Leo was there in an instant, his arm securely around Elias's waist, steadying him. "I've got you," he murmured, his voice a solid anchor in the storm of Elias's anxiety. "We're in this together, remember?" Elias nodded, drawing strength from his friend's unwavering support. Together, they pushed through the doors and into the bright, airy lobby. A receptionist looked up as they approached, her smile warm and welcoming. "Good morning," she greeted them. "How can I help you today?" Elias's throat went dry. The carefully rehearsed words, the name, the purpose of his visit, they all evaporated from his mind. Leonard squeezed his hand, a silent, urgent message of encouragement. Elias found his voice at last, a thin, reedy sound he barely recognized as his own. I have an appointment with Dr. Albright, he managed. The name is Elias. Elias Thorne. The receptionist's smile never faltered as she tapped at her keyboard. Of course, Mr. Thorne. Dr. Albright is expecting you. If you'll just have a seat, she'll be with you shortly. Elias mumbled his thanks, his gaze fixed on the floor as Leo guided him to a plush leather chair in the corner. The waiting room was an oasis of beige and muted greens, designed to be calming, but to Elias, it felt like a soundproof chamber where his own racing heartbeat was the only audible thing. His leg began to bounce, a frantic, uncontrollable rhythm against the polished floor. His fingers twisted the soft fabric of his sweater, knotting and unknotting the hem until the wool was warm and damp in his grasp. Every tick of the minimalist clock on the wall was a hammer blow against his resolve. He scanned the faces of the few other people in the room, his mind creating elaborate, painful narratives. Were they here for the same reason? Were they judging him, seeing through his carefully constructed masculine facade to the terrified woman cowering beneath? Hey, Leo said softly, his voice cutting through the noise in Elias's head. He reached over and covered Elias's restless hands with his own, stilling their frantic movement. Breathe. Just breathe. Dr. Albright has helped hundreds of people just like you. She's not here to judge. She's here to help. Elias nodded, trying to draw comfort from his friend's words, from the steady warmth of his hand. But the anxiety was a living thing, a coiled serpent in his gut, tightening with every passing minute. He felt a wave of nausea and was certain he was going to be sick right there on the pristine carpet. By the time a nurse with a kind face and a clipboard appeared in the doorway, Elias's entire body was trembling. Elias Thorne, the nurse called, her voice gentle. He stood on shaky legs, Leo rising with him like a silent, supportive shadow. That's me, he said, the words barely a whisper. The nurse smiled. Dr. Albright is ready for you now. Would you like your friend to accompany you? Elias shot a panicked look at Leo, who gave a firm, encouraging nod. The thought of facing this alone was unbearable. Yes, please, Elias said, relief washing over him. If that's all right. Of course, the nurse replied. Right this way. They followed her down a short, quiet hallway. The click of Elias's own boots on the tiled floor echoed loudly in the space, each step sounding like a final, irreversible footfall. At last, they reached a door with a tasteful brass plaque that read, Dr. Annalise Albright, Gender Affirmation Specialist. The nurse knocked once before pushing the door open. Dr. Albright, your 10 o'clock is here. Wonderful, send them in, called a warm, rich voice from within. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, Elias stepped over the threshold, Leo close behind him. The office was not the cold, clinical space he had imagined. It was filled with light from a large window overlooking a small garden. The walls were lined with books, and the air smelled faintly of lavender and old paper. Dr. Albright rose from behind a large oak desk, her smile genuine and welcoming. She was a striking woman in her late 40s, with salt and pepper haircut in a chic, short style and intelligent brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. Elias Thorne, I presume, she said, extending a hand. I'm Dr. Albright. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Elias shook her hand, surprised by the firm, reassuring strength in her grip. Likewise, he managed to say, This is my friend Leo. I hope it's okay that he's here. Of course, Dr. Albright said, shaking Leo's hand as well. Support systems are crucial in this journey. Please have a seat. As they settled into the comfortable chairs across from her desk, Dr. Albright leaned forward, her expression open and attentive. She didn't look at her computer or a chart, she looked directly at Elias. So, Elias, she began, her voice calm and even, why don't you tell me a bit about yourself and what brings you to my office today? He swallowed hard, the rehearsed speeches and carefully constructed explanations he'd practiced 100 times in his head vanishing into thin air. He was at a total loss for words, his mind a blank slate of panic. He felt Leo's presence beside him, a solid, grounding force. His friend reached over, unseen by the doctor, and gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. Drawing strength from that simple touch, Elias took a breath and began to speak, the words coming out soft and haltingly at first. "For as long as I can remember," he said, his eyes fixed on his twisting fingers in his lap, "I've known that I was different. That the body I was born into, it isn't me. It isn't who I truly am inside." Dr. Albright nodded encouragingly, her pen poised over a notepad but not yet moving. She simply listened, her entire focus on him. "And who are you inside, Elias?" she asked gently. His eyes welled with tears, hot and sudden. But for the first time, he didn't try to hold them back, didn't try to swallow the lump in his throat. He looked up, meeting the doctor's compassionate gaze. I'm a woman," he whispered, the two words feeling both monumental and terrifyingly simple. "I've always been a woman. I need help making the outside match the inside." As the words left his lips, a profound, shuddering release washed over him. He had said it. After years of hiding, of pretending, of silent, lonely anguish, he had finally spoken his truth aloud to someone who could help. A sob escaped him, and he quickly brought a hand to his mouth, embarrassed. Dr. Albright's smile was warm and devoid of pity. "Thank you for sharing that with me, Elias. I know how difficult and scary it can be to take this first step. But I want you to know that you're not alone. You are in the right place." She finally picked up her pen. "This journey you're on, it's a valid one, and my role is to be your guide and your advocate." She leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "Now, I'd like to discuss your options. Gender confirmation is a complex process, not a single event. There are many different approaches we can take, from social transition to medical and surgical options. It is absolutely essential that we find the path that is right for you, at a pace that feels right for you." For the next hour, a conversation Elias had dreaded for years unfolded with a surprising ease. Dr. Albright patiently explained the various medical and surgical options available, discussing hormone replacement therapy, its effects, its timeline, and its risks, with candor and compassion. She answered every one of Elias's questions, the ones he'd written down and the ones that tumbled out, raw and unformed, never once making him feel judged or foolish for his concerns. She treated his fear not as an obstacle, but as a natural and important part of the process. As the consultation drew to a close, Dr. Albright sat back with a smile. "Well, Elias, we've covered quite a bit of ground today. How are you feeling?" Elias took a moment to consider the question, to truly check in with himself. The terror that had gripped him in the waiting room had receded, replaced by a feeling he hadn't dared to entertain for a very long time. Overwhelmed, he admitted with a shaky laugh. "But hopeful. For the first time in my life, I feel like there might actually be a light at the end of this tunnel." Dr. Albright nodded approvingly. "That's wonderful to hear. That hope is what we'll build on. Now, I'd like to schedule you for some preliminary blood tests and a psychological assessment, which is standard procedure. Once we have those results, we can start putting together a more concrete treatment plan. How does that sound?" "It sounds perfect," Elias said, a genuine, unforced smile spreading across his face. "Thank you, Dr. Albright, for everything." As they left the office and walked back down the now silent hallway, Elias felt as though he were walking on air. The world looked sharper, the colors more vibrant. Back in the parking lot, Leo slung an arm around his shoulders, grinning from ear to ear. "See," he said, his voice brimming with emotion. "I told you it would be okay. Dr. Albright is amazing, isn't she?" Elias nodded, still somewhat dazed by the whirlwind of information and emotion. "She really is. I can't believe this is actually happening, Leo. It feels like a dream." Leo's expression softened, and he pulled Elias into a tight, fierce hug right there in the middle of the parking lot. "It's not a dream, sweetheart," he whispered into Elias's hair. This is real. You're finally on your way. The weeks that followed the initial consultation were a paradoxical blend of agonizing slowness and dizzying speed. Time seemed to crawl as Elias waited for test results and appointment dates, yet his life had been upended by a whirlwind of new activity. He navigated a gauntlet of medical appointments, from the cold, impersonal efficiency of the phlebotomist drawing his blood to the intense, soul-bearing sessions with a gender therapist Dr. Albright had recommended. This therapist, a calm and perceptive woman named Dr. Reed, helped him unpack decades of repressed emotions, guiding him through the labyrinth of his own identity with a gentle but firm hand. Through it all, a mountain of paperwork grew on his desk: insurance forms, medical history questionnaires, consent documents, each signature feeling like another small, definitive step away from the life he had known. Elias threw himself into research with a feverish intensity. He spent hours illuminated by the blue glow of his laptop, devouring every article, every scientific study, every personal blog he could find about hormone replacement therapy. He watched transition timelines on YouTube, his heart aching with a mixture of profound hope and a sharp, envious pang for those who were further along on their journeys. He saw the miraculous softening of jawlines, the blossoming of new curves, the light returning to people's eyes. But a darker, more anxious part of his mind fixated on the rare, tragic stories of regret or complications, the comments sections filled with vitriol, and the clinical descriptions of potential side effects. The hope was real, but it was fragile, constantly besieged by a lifetime of ingrained fear. Leo remained his constant. He was more than just a supportive friend. He was an active partner in this nascent transformation. He sat in waiting rooms for hours, making terrible puns about the generic art on the walls to distract Elias from his nerves. He helped Elias decipher the labyrinthine legal paperwork required for an eventual name and gender marker change, turning the daunting task into a manageable checklist. Most importantly, he spent countless hours on the couch in their small apartment, just listening. He listened as Elias poured out a lifetime of hopes for the future that was finally, terrifyingly, within reach. And he listened as Elias confessed the deep, ugly fears that surfaced in the dead of night. As the date of his first hormone therapy appointment drew near, the day he would receive his first prescription for estrogen, the anxiety began to eclipse the hope. The theoretical what-ifs became visceral, immediate terrors. What if it didn't work? What if his body, so stubbornly masculine for so long, rejected the hormones? What if, after all this, he looked in the mirror and still saw a stranger, just a different kind of stranger? What if he changed his mind? That last thought was the most insidious, a whisper of self-doubt that threatened to unravel everything. The night before the appointment, the whispers became a roar. Elias lay awake in bed, staring at the shifting shadows on his ceiling, his mind a relentless carousel of worst-case scenarios. He imagined his family's confused, hurt faces. He pictured losing his job. He saw himself trapped in an in-between state, belonging nowhere, a grotesque caricature of femininity. Unable to bear the crushing weight of the solitude any longer, his hand shaking, he reached for his phone and dialed Leo's number. It was well after midnight, but he knew Leo would answer. His friend's voice was thick with sleep. "Eli? What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm scared, Leo," Elias whispered, his voice trembling so hard it threatened to shatter. The simple admission opened a floodgate, and a sob caught in his throat. What if I'm making a huge, irreversible mistake? There was a rustling sound on the other end of the line, and Elias could picture Leo sitting up in bed, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, his full attention snapping into focus. "Oh, sweetheart," he said softly, his voice a balm on Elias's frayed nerves. "It's normal to be scared. This is a big step. But you've wanted this for so long. You've thought it through, you've talked to the doctors, you've done all the work. You've been preparing for this your entire life, even when you didn't know it. This isn't a mistake, Eli. This is you finally becoming who you've always been meant to be." Tears slid down Elias's cheeks, hot against his cool skin as he listened to his friend's reassuring words. "What if people don't accept me?" he asked, voicing the terror that lay beneath all the others. What if I lose everyone I care about? You won't lose me, Leo said, his voice firm, unequivocal, a promise forged in years of friendship. No matter what happens, no matter how you look or what name you choose or anything else, you will always have me in your corner. That is a fact of the universe, Eli. And anyone else who can't see how amazing and beautiful you are, inside and out, they don't deserve to be in your life anyway. Their loss, not yours. Elias closed his eyes, letting Leo's words wash over him, a powerful tide pushing back the darkness. He held the phone to his ear, listening to the simple, steady sound of his best friend's breathing. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Leo." "Lucky for you, you'll never have to find out," Leo replied, a smile evident in his voice now. "Now, try to get some sleep, okay? Tomorrow's a big day and you need your beauty rest." After they hung up, Elias lay back against his pillows. The fear hadn't vanished entirely, but it no longer had teeth. It was a dull ache now, overshadowed by the fierce, protective love of his friend. As he finally drifted off to sleep, he felt a sense of calm settle over him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew with absolute certainty that he wouldn't have to face them alone. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the kind of crisp, brilliant day that felt like an auspicious omen. It was as if the universe itself were celebrating Elias's new beginning. He hadn't slept much, but the exhaustion was thrumming with a nervous, electric energy. Leo arrived early, true to his word, armed with a cardboard tray holding 2 large coffees and a paper bag emanating the warm, sugary scent of pastries from Elias's favorite bakery. "Got to make sure you're properly fueled for your big day," he said with a wink, setting the goodies on the small kitchen counter. "Can't have you fainting on the doctor." Elias emerged from the bedroom, fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. He'd agonized over what to wear, trying on and discarding half his wardrobe. He wanted to feel like himself, or rather, like the self he was striving to become. He had finally settled on a pair of well-fitting skinny jeans and a flowing, feminine blouse in a soft shade of cornflower blue that brought out the gold flecks in his hazel eyes. It was a subtle choice, but to him, it felt like a declaration. Leo let out a low, appreciative whistle. Well, he said, a wide grin spreading across his face. "Look at you, hot stuff. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you were trying to impress someone." A blush crept up Elias's neck, and he swatted at his friend playfully. "Oh, stop it. I wanted to look nice. For myself." Leo's teasing expression softened instantly, replaced by a look of genuine warmth and affection. "And you do," he said sincerely, his voice quiet. "You look beautiful, Eli. Inside and out." They shared a quiet moment, the air between them thick with unspoken emotion, with years of friendship culminating in this single, pivotal day. Then Leo clapped his hands briskly, breaking the spell. "All right, enough mushy stuff," he declared. "Let's get some food in you before we head out. We march on our stomachs." As they ate, Leo kept up a steady stream of cheerful chatter, recounting a ridiculous story about a customer at his bookstore job and speculating wildly about what superpowers they would choose if they could have any. It was a masterful distraction, and before Elias knew it, the knot of anxiety in his stomach had loosened just enough for him to finish his pastry. It was time to leave. The drive to the clinic seemed to take both an eternity and no time at all. As Leonard pulled into a parking space, Elias felt his heart begin to hammer against his ribs again, a frantic drumbeat of fear and anticipation. "Hey," Leo said softly, turning off the car and reaching over to squeeze Elias's hand. His grip was firm, a solid anchor. "You've got this. I'm so proud of you, you know that." Elias could only nod, not trusting himself to speak past the lump forming in his throat. Together, they made their way into the clinic. The waiting room was mercifully quiet, with only a handful of other patients scattered about. Elias sank into a chair, his leg beginning its nervous bounce as he waited for his name to be called. After what felt like hours, but was likely only a few minutes, a nurse appeared in the doorway. "Elias Thorne?" He stood on shaky legs, Leo rising with him. The nurse smiled kindly. "Right this way, please. Dr. Matthews is ready for you." As they followed the nurse down the same hallway as before, Elias felt as though he were walking through a dream. This was it. The moment that would change everything. The point of no return. Dr. Matthews turned out to be a cheerful, energetic woman in her early 30s with a shock of curly black hair and a ready smile. She greeted Elias warmly, shaking his hand before gesturing for him to take a seat. Her office was brighter than Dr. Albright's, decorated with modern art and thriving plants. "So, Elias," she began, her tone friendly but professional, "today's the big day. How are you feeling?" Elias took a deep breath, considering the question honestly. "Nervous," he admitted. "Excited." "Terrified." "All of the above, I guess." Dr. Matthews nodded understandingly. "That's completely normal," she assured him. "Starting hormone therapy is a big step, but I want you to know that we're going to take things slow and steady. We'll be monitoring you closely, and if at any point you feel uncomfortable or have concerns, I want you to speak up. Your comfort and safety are our top priorities." "Okay." Elias nodded, feeling some of the tension leave his shoulders. "Okay," he said. "I can do that." "Excellent," Dr. Matthews said with a smile. "Now let's go over the treatment plan one more time, just to make sure we're all on the same page." For the next half hour, she patiently explained the effects of the anti-androgen and estrogen he'd be starting, the timeline for expected changes, and the schedule for his follow-up appointments. By the time she finished, Elias felt significantly calmer and more prepared for what lay ahead. "All right," Dr. Matthews said at last, turning to her computer to electronically send a prescription to the in-house pharmacy. "Are you ready to take your first dose?" Elias's heart leaped into his throat. This was it. The moment of truth. He looked to Leo, who was watching him with an expression of pure, unwavering support. Leo gave him an encouraging nod, a small, almost imperceptible movement that conveyed a world of belief in him. "I'm ready," Elias said, his voice barely above a whisper, but steady. Dr. Matthews smiled warmly as she handed him the paperwork for the pharmacy downstairs. "Congratulations, Elias," she said. "This is the first day of the rest of your life." As they left the clinic a short while later, Elias clutched the small paper bag containing the box of pills to his chest like a precious, fragile treasure. In the elevator, Leo slung an arm around his shoulders, grinning from ear to ear. "I am so incredibly proud of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion as he pulled Elias close. "You did it, sweetheart. You took the first step." Elias leaned into his friend's embrace, overwhelmed by the tidal wave of emotions coursing through him: relief, terror, joy, disbelief. "I couldn't have done it without you, Leo," he murmured into his friend's shoulder. "Thank you. For everything." Leonard pressed a kiss to the top of Elias's head. "Anytime, princess. Now, what do you say we go celebrate? I think this calls for ice cream. My treat." Elias laughed, a real, genuine laugh that felt lighter than anything he'd experienced in years. "Ice cream sounds perfect," he agreed. As they walked to the car, hand in hand in the bright afternoon sun, Elias felt a sense of hope and possibility so potent it was almost dizzying. The road ahead would be long and challenging, he knew. But for the first time in his life, holding the key to his own becoming in a small paper bag, he truly believed that happiness, true, authentic happiness, was finally within his reach.